I thank you very much for tuning in to That Will Never Work podcast. Success doesn't break leaders, pressure reveals them. Today's guest, Dr. Vivek, brings critical insights on building resilience, sharpening mental discipline, and developing the mindset required to lead through setbacks and still win. Let's talk about it right after this.
Educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Never Work, an award-winning podcast where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here's your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
Thank you very much for tuning in today. So, our guest today speaks from the intersection of precision, leadership, and mental toughness, where excuses don't survive and resilience becomes non-negotiable. So, Dr. Eranki, was there a moment in your journey where mental resilience, not strategy, became the deciding factor between breaking down and breaking through?
Hi, Maurice. Thank you so much for having me on. Mental resilience
Mm-hmm.
is something that is very critical whether you're in a 9 to 5 job or whether you're in business, but
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're in business where you are completely accountable for all your actions. I would say it's extremely important. And I recall being put in situations where mental and physical resilience was extremely important in what I was doing on a day-to-day basis
Mm-hmm.
when I was in the public health system in Australia or in the hospitals in Australia. And what I found is what I learned there has transitioned me very well into business.
Mm-hmm.
And in a typical Australian fashion, I mean, I've got a story as to as to mental resilience. So it was a Friday evening, so I worked the whole week. I was on call for the weekend. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's very, very busy. But around 9 o'clock at night, I get a phone call from the emergency department. And I just went back to the house. I was just relaxing, warmed up the dinner. And it was a fellow that got bitten by a crocodile. And if
Oh,
you don't know much
wow.
about Australian crocodiles, they're huge. They're about, 3 times the length of a human being. So
Right.
they're massive, massive things, horrible things. They will mess you up if you go near them. So anyway, went in there. I found that a crocodile essentially bit him at the knee
Mm.
and took out a whole leg,
Oh,
and
wow.
the other leg was not in a good shape. And at that point, I was a junior doctor in the hospital system. I was a junior surgeon, and my boss was about 2 hours away. Because again, Australia is a big place; people
Mm-hmm.
live far away. So I had to tend to it. And by the time I took him to theater, by the time we stabilized him, it was way past midnight.
Mm.
And then that was just the start of the night, and I ended up working for the whole weekend straight. And when you're a junior doctor, you learn resilience from the start because you understand that if you don't have resilience, people are going to suffer, people could
Mm.
die, and things can happen that are not ideal. And
Right.
because as a doctor you want to do the best thing for people, you learn resilience from a young age. And
Mm.
when you then go into business, it's a very transferable skill. I can't think of any industry in the world or any venture where resilience doesn't yield a asymmetric return.
Right. So, well, first, I'm sorry, my brain went somewhere. Have you ever seen that movie, Happy Gilmore?
I have, yeah.
So when you said something about the crocodile, it made me think about what's his name when he got his hand bitten off by the alligator.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you know. But sometimes when we look at that, we don't understand what really goes into that type of real, scenario or situation. Because even though there is a movie reference that I use, but like you said, from a business perspective, you don't know what's going to be that alligator, that crocodile that's going to come and
Correct.
try to rip you apart. And
Correct.
sometimes we're not always prepared for that. So how do we need to change that mindset as we move into business or moving from our 9 to 5 to business? Because we're not always prepared and people sometimes are gatekeeping that information as well. So what would you suggest to someone to change that mindset?
What I suggest is, unless you identified, it's going to be hard to change it. And no one ever walks into a situation going, I don't want to be resilient, I want to be lazy. But it's just that they don't understand what resilience looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I've found out what the way I explain resilience to people is that when you're faced with a choice, there's always an easy choice and a hard choice.
Mm-hmm.
And the right answer is usually never the easy choice. So it's always a tougher decision. So the way I look at resilience is people, you always have to be picking the right or the harder choice
Mm-hmm.
when you are at the crossroads. And majority of the people tend to lean towards the easier option,
Mm-hmm.
but a small number of people who've been through life's challenges understand that the cost of doing that is disproportionately higher in the long run, and
Mm.
it's so much better to lean into the harder option early on and just getting it out of the way.
Mm. So there's a word that you stated or that you said, and we talked about it a little bit in the green room. There's one word, and I would like for you to give me a definite, what your perceived definition, because everybody's definition will be different, right? But
Mm.
there's one word that you said, and it's the word lazy. What does the word lazy mean to you? And in context to being working a 9 to 5 to entrepreneurship.
That's a good question. The word lazy
Mm-hmm.
has a lot of negative
It
connotations,
does.
and it does. And if you were to look at it objectively, right,
Mm-hmm.
and people add on a lot of emotion to words. If you look at it objectively, it is people who optimize to the easiest option in front of them.
Mm.
That's how I see laziness. And it could be people don't want to be lazy. And what I usually find is people usually pick the easiest choice simply because they're inexperienced and they don't understand that picking the easy choice is actually going to be harder in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
Or there might be something personal happening behind the scenes. They may not have good work life homeostasis.
Mm.
And they just don't understand that one has to work in conjunction with the other. There may be other factors there, but
Mm-hmm.
what I find with laziness is that people like these guys usually optimize to what is easier,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how I see laziness.
Mm. And I ask that because sometimes what, as you stated as well, lazy may equal easy, quote unquote. I'm going to put that in quotes because unfortunately we get caught up in being results oriented,
Correct.
right? And so we feel like, hey, if we tackle the low hanging fruit, if you will, we'll have maybe what that person next to us has, what that person on social media has, or whatever, and not
Mm,
understanding, as you stated, sometimes we need to be a little more patient as well. Because you being a
correct.
doctor, how long did you have to study? How much did you
Uh,
have to study?
just a couple of years, and
but that type of thing, like we don't understand, we don't do the research, and we may not always understand our industry that we're trying to get into
mm,
100%. Because sometimes we don't know, hey, you know what? This person has been in this industry for the last 20 years, but we don't know it. Just because they look young doesn't mean that they are young, right? You know,
mm.
and so how do we change that and understand and try to get a little deeper? Because unfortunately, we get so caught up in the results that we don't understand the real work that goes behind it.
That's a good question. I mean, results orientation is important,
Mm-hmm.
but fixating purely on the result means that you sometimes miss the opportunities that do present themselves along the way as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I usually find is people who are and a perfect example of this is Steve Jobs. you
Yeah.
find that he used to be very definitive in the way he thought about something
Mm-hmm.
until he received a variable to the contrary and then went, you know what, let's actually pivot in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
um like if you look at Apple, there was at the start of when the iPhone came out, they were very anti styluses, and then they went, hang on, if we had an Apple Pencil, people could actually extract a lot more value out of their iPads, and they were very open to bringing in Apple Pencils. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the time when you're purely results driven, you don't see opportunities that do present themselves in
Hmm.
either direction. And the other important thing that you brought up was social media.
Hmm.
And I personally think social media has a a huge negative effect on people
Hmm.
unless you use it in a very defined way. For example, if you use it for educational purposes, to
Yeah.
motivate you, to for market research, a lot of people get stuck in this doom scrolling,
Yes.
and we found that it does horrible things to people's psyche. It increases their fatigue, it increases their burnout, it
Yeah.
increases their anxiety levels. And again, that then makes people optimize towards laziness.
Hmm.
Not that they are lazy, but they just do not have the resilience anymore to tackle what's in front of them.
Mm.
Um, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Finish.
Oh no, no. I was just going to say. I was just going to say one of the things that that Australia did really well
Mm.
recently is that they banned social media for anyone under the age of 16.
Really?
Yeah, and
Wow.
yeah. I mean, the results aren't out yet because it's very new. But I suspect the amount of mental health issues in young kids is going to be significantly lower in the coming years. Um, I've got three kids myself, and the my oldest son is now at the age where he's got a mobile phone, and yeah, and I was worried about it. I was worried that he'd go on social media, he'd be wasting his time. But yeah, it's good that social media has been disallowed in kids now, so that they can be kids and they can form the neural pathways where they
Mm.
actually tackle the issues in front of them rather than what's on the screen.
Mm. So there's a few things that I want to touch on that you
Yeah.
stated. First, I'm gonna go back to your Apple example. So if you think about it, because a lot of people complain that Apple is slow on the draw when they look at Android with flip phones and this and that, like you said, the stylus, all that type of stuff. But if we take a look at Apple, even with their Apple Silicon right now,
Mm-hmm.
is unbeatable right now. I don't
Mm.
care what Intel or AMD, whatever they decide try to do, like it's not keeping up with what the M4 and M5s are doing in Apple. And so if you think about it, how long have they been working on this technology? Even though
Correct.
these people have been doing it for a very long time, but Apple is kind of blowing them out. If you take a look at even the iPhones, just some of their speed and flexibility, those type of things, the
Mm.
iPad, and then just the ecosystem and how everything works relatively well. I can't say it's perfect, you get what I mean, but it's
Mm.
relatively well. And so if we take a look at social media, right, and how people might need to fall back a little bit and understand, like, hey, let me look at the whole landscape for a moment. Let me make time to study and understand what's going on, because I'm just wondering from Australia's perspective, what is the education level going to be for these children that's in school? How much are their studies are going to rise, their test score, whatever it is that they're trying to
Mm.
benchmark, because unfortunately, when you get caught up, and I look at my own children, my children are 24 and 22, and they were really
Mm.
caught up in um, social media growing up and things like that, doing WhatsApp and all that type of stuff.
Mm.
It really made their attention span, like they were too split up. They were trying to do too
Mm.
many things at one time, getting distracted in school, too busy showing videos and all that type of stuff. So I think those are the type of things that we take the time to slow down, see what's going
Mm.
on, see what everybody else is doing, and then adjust so that way we can make a better product, because I think that's what Australia is doing, making a better product than what the rest of the world may consider.
Mm. That's a very, very good point, and there's a huge correlation between what you said with kids and multiple stimuli and what Apple does. It's the same approach. If
Mm-hmm.
like, I mean, we've got a very good IT department, and we are constantly looking at updating our app. So I've actually got an iPhone and an Android phone with me, simply because I need to see how both of them are
Right.
working, and I need
Mm-hmm.
to test out our apps on both of them. And what I found is they're both approximately the same, except the only difference is iPhone has a much higher threshold in saying, yep, this passes our test in order to release it. So they have a much lower threshold, as a much higher threshold in terms of what they release.
Mm-hmm.
So they really pursue perfection. Whereas what
Hmm.
I find with Android is that they tend to be a little bit more scattered. They tend to a Galaxy phone, for example, is very different to a Pixel phone, and
Hmm.
things work, but they just don't work perfectly because it tries to do too many things at the same time. So by
Hmm.
being laser focused, I think yeah, it does help technology and people as well.
Hmm.
And you're dead right about being on WhatsApp or watching videos, getting influenced by what they see on social media.
Right.
I mean, if you think back to when we were in our 20s and 15s or late teens or early
Hmm.
teens, we didn't have any of these distractions. I mean,
No.
we had, what is it, like a 8-bit computer console that you plugged into the TV.
Hmm.
That's basically it. And I can't remember how many TV channels used to be in Australia when I was a kid, maybe about three or four. You didn't have infinite amount of information being bombarded towards you. So yeah, I think it's good to have that reset.
Hmm.
I completely agree with what you're saying.
And so there's something that you had mentioned as well, talking about the Android, right? That software is across how many different phones, how many different
Mm,
brands. And so unfortunately, that Android has to be compatible with so many different types of technology. Where
correct.
Apple, they only worry about their own brand.
Correct.
And so
Yep.
when they build their operating system, they're only worried about their own mission and vision. So how do we
Hmm.
make sure that these entrepreneurs, potential entrepreneurs, stay laser focused on their mission and their vision and not worry about all the other brands that are out there?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, we've been having these conversations a lot recently, actually, because around middle of last year, 2025, we opened our company up for franchising. So we last year we opened 4 franchise clinics. This year we've got about 10 about to open soon. So these are people that I'm closely working with myself.
Hmm.
And the first thing that I tell people is don't ever worry about what the competition's doing. The competition
Hmm.
does what the competition does, it's irrelevant to you. You just need to worry about exactly the person in front of you and bringing as much value to that person
Hmm.
in front of you. And if you keep doing that again and again and again, then you will never ever ever have an empty slot in your booking schedule ever again.
Hmm.
Whereas what I find with people that aren't very busy, for example, in the services industry, such as healthcare, they often worry disproportionately about things outside their control, right?
Hmm.
Uh, the fact that somebody opened up nearby to them, or what services do they offer, or what is their price point, or everything. What is their marketing like? So they're trying to chase multiple different rats into multiple different burrows, and it just doesn't work.
Hmm. You said something about franchising.
Mm,
Sometimes when we hear that word, because I've had some clients that have considered that, but they get a little overwhelmed, a little piece of anxiety because they feel like that's something that they can't achieve. And sometimes I have to express to them that maybe your dream needs to scare you just a little bit, right?
mm,
Because sometimes going outside of the 9 to 5 because it's easy, those golden handcuffs, those benefits,
hmm.
those type of things. So how do you overcome that idea, quote unquote, of fear going into something that's a little bit larger than you?
Yeah, that's a very good point, and I speak to a lot of doctors who are exactly in that position. Because our franchising pathway, especially at the start, we've only opened it for doctors and nurses. So all the franchisees that we've got are either doctors and nurses, and the incoming ones are also doctors and nurses. So they are in a very good position in the hospital system. They make good money,
Hmm.
and a lot of them look at it in terms of, well, if I jump out of the hospital system, then yeah, as you mentioned, they have good golden handcuffs on, and it and they're worried that they may lose it,
Hmm.
and that comfort pretty much traps them in. And the question that I ask them is, if you want to step out, do you think you're going to be in a better position today or in 5 years' time? Noting
Mm.
that in 5 years they'll be a lot older, their resilience will be a lot lower, the kids will be older as well, they might be in high school, so the demands would be higher. And
Mm-hmm.
then I'll look at everything in terms of the opportunity cost. So, for example, if a doctor was to stop for a couple of years, go into business, if it doesn't work out, if they're not having fun, they can always go back.
Mm-hmm.
The country always needs more doctors, right? And
Mm-hmm.
doctors today make a lot more than doctors 2 years ago. So if they were to jump back, they'd be jumping back into a pool where they're making a lot more money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, the fact that they've stepped out for 2 years and stepping back in means that they're not stuck in the same job. They can actually now job hunt for a
Mm-hmm.
better offer. So the way I tell doctors and nurses is they have nothing to lose in jumping out of the healthcare system,
Mm-hmm.
um, testing out if entrepreneurship works for them, and then jumping back in. But one of the things that I found out, and we were talking about this earlier,
Mm-hmm.
is I was under the impression that a lot of people, when they jump out of the health system, they're doing so to make more money. And funny enough, none of them are. Like, we expected the incoming franchisees to essentially be working. We didn't want them to. We thought they would. They have the freedom to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week,
Mm-hmm.
and just grind. But instead, what they've done is they've looked at how much money they're making the hospitals, and they've titrated their work to the same amount of money. But what they found is rather than working 9 to 5, or if you're in the hospital system, you'd be working a lot more than 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
They found that they're working a lot less than what they were before, making the same amount of money when they run their businesses. So what we found is that they are optimizing towards having good work-life balance rather than just grinding in a healthcare system. And the other thing that we found that they really value is the flexibility to work harder if they want to work harder, or scale it right back if they want to enjoy more time with their family, as well as working on something that has value. Say, for example, you're working in a hospital
Mm-hmm.
for 20 years of your life. Yes, you have a lot to show for it. I mean, and there is so much benefit that you get more than the financial in terms of the people you help.
Right.
But it's not an investment. Whereas you work on a business for 20 years, you can sell that business. You can sell that business for a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other thing that really is motivating people, is the fact that they're building an asset. And that is something that you will never get when you're working in a 9 to 5 job,
Mm.
and that you will only get if you jump to the other side into business.
Wow. Um, you said a lot, and unfortunately, we don't understand that level of value. Like you said, that
Mm,
asset, that investment, because again, sometimes we're looking for the easy route, right?
mm,
We don't understand that in order for you to get a fast food chain, you might have to go to their university to learn their processes, right? You
mm,
know, um, I used to work in a hospital as well. And so, yes, I was in the administrative staff, but to see how much work had gone into any and everything that we done, and how much
mm,
we had to make sure that we were on point moving
mm,
forward, no matter what the situation was, whether we were writing a note, whether we were checking insurance, whatever it might have been,
mm,
because everything to some degree costs money, and I think
mm.
sometimes if you lose focus, that could mean that industry or that opportunity could be lost. So even when it comes to our business, sometimes we don't understand that we still have to be on top of everything,
Oh yeah,
regardless of what the situation is. Like if we could put that much effort into that 9 to 5, we could definitely put that effort into us
correct,
ourselves.
correct, correct. And that's one of the reasons for the foreseeable future, limiting our intake of franchisees, doctors, and nurses, is because they are used to always focusing on what's in front of them, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
look at doctors, you never have a surgeon who's operating and thinking about something else. They are actively thinking about the patient in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't, there'll be consequences to the
Right.
patient's life. And so it is something that is grilled into everyone in the hospital system from the start.
Right.
And what we found is when they transitioned from the hospital system into business, they've transferred those skills as well.
Mm-hmm.
So far, we haven't had any issues with anyone not having their eyes on the prize. I mean, sometimes we have to rein some people in terms of them getting distracted with what the other competitors are doing nearby. But again, I consider that more as a personality trait rather than anything else.
Hmm.
But yeah, very, very spot on up there. You always have to be laser focused
Hmm.
on the key deliverables here.
Wow. Man, I appreciate you coming on today. I really do. I think you're giving a lot of information, a lot of value today. I appreciate you.
Not at all. Thank you so much for having me on.
And for the information that you have provided, for those individuals that are really looking to like, yo, really like this guy. Let me find out more information. Where can they find you and talk to you?
Ab- Absolutely. So our clinics are called Cosmetique, which is COSMETIQUE. We are in Australia. Otherwise, you can always look me up on LinkedIn. My name is Vivek Eranki. That's VIVEKERANKI. And yeah, I'm very happy to help anyone if they reach out and if they have any questions.
Cool. And so, of course, y'all, the information will be in the show notes. So if you're biking, hiking, canoeing, whatever it might be, the information will be there. But I have to ask you one last question before I let you go. And I ask my guest this question across the board. Would you rather question? So would you rather choose 3 doors or a fork in the road?
Hmm. I would always choose a fork in the road because you can see what is on the horizon, whereas with the doors you can't. So you are working
Mm.
with more information.
So let me now I'm gonna throw this caveat in there, right? Because this is the
Sure.
part that I left out, unfortunately. Use your imagination. If I say use your imagination, no parameters, no boundaries, would your answer change?
Not really, no.
Okay. Here's the reason why I asked. Because when I asked that question, someone did answer and say, hey, those doors are glass. So I know what's behind those doors. Or they, have you ever seen the movie Inception where the road goes up? So now they get to see where those roads are leading. They don't have to lean over, So yeah, it's those type of things. So that's why I asked if I had put
Maurice,
that brand.
I just on the weekend watched Scream, and the fellow always hides on the other side of the door. So maybe that's why subconsciously I don't want to open the door. I'd rather be out in the open where I can see him.
Well, I can understand your answer then. Man, listen, but I appreciate you coming on the show today.
Not at all. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Sure, thank you. And of course, y'all, thank y'all very much for listening to That Will Never Work podcast. Of course, here's the thing I really would like for y'all to do. Identify one setback you've been avoiding and extract the lesson from it, and commit to one daily practice that strengthens your mental discipline this week. So I challenge each and every one of you to do that. I thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to y'all just a little bit later.
Thanks for listening. Follow Maurice Chisholm on social media to stay connected and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work. Or will it?